presentation, was kind of a life-changing trip for a group of us. So this was in 2023, after we were, I think, supposed to go in 2020. So it was 3+ years of COVID-related delays, and we finally got to go diving in Bikini Atoll. And if you're not familiar with Bikini Atoll, the United States, after Trinity in 45, we wanted to test nuclear bombs in more real world conditions. And so we found one of the most far-flung places that we could, and you can see on the map, I'm pointing as if you can see where I'm pointing. You can see it's kind of in the middle of nowhere, and it was a very pristine atoll. And in 1946, we did two major nuclear bomb tests there. We ended up doing far more around the whole region as time went on for many years. But in 45 and 46 are what found us there, and it's because we wanted to find out what would happen to warships when faced with nuclear attacks. And the first bomb that we dropped was the Able bomb, and it was dropped in air, and it sunk just a couple of ships. And in fact, a lot of the press who were there at the time went home at that point, because it was kind of wildly unimpressive. It was a big boom in the air, a couple of ships sank, and that was that. And so the next bomb that they dropped, they detonated underwater, and it was far more powerful than they had ever anticipated. And while it didn't sink all of the ships there, it sank quite a few ships, or they caught fire and sank over time and things like that. And one of the really neat things about Bikini is that in part of wanting to know what would happen, they left all of the things on board. The ships were not like environmentally sterilized or or anything like that. Everything was left there as it would have been had these ships been at war. And the other quote here is basically, so there were people, not very many, under 200 people living on Bikini, and we basically tricked them into giving up their homeland by saying it wouldn't be very long, number one, and that their sacrifice would end all war and was for the good of all mankind, which many years removed, we know is not quite the case. So yes, so after several years of waiting, there's a group of 11 or 12 of us, and you get to Bikini Atoll by way of Kwajalein, which is a military base in the Marshall Islands. And from there, you take a ferry over to a small island called Ebeye, which reportedly has 15,000 people living in 80 habitable square acres of land with not a single high rise. So it is an interesting place to say the least. On our way in, we spent a very brief amount of time there. We just got our bags and we got on the boat. And then this was our route. If you don't have a Garmin, I highly recommend it. It's great fun for not only communicating, but just seeing where you went. So we started over in Kwajalein and then to Bikini. So this was 35-ish hours in flight, and then another about 30-hour motor from Ebeye to Kwajalein. And we were very lucky in that we had very calm seas. I have quite a few friends who have been and did not have that luck.
So I had a couple questions. So
Sure.
did Kwajalein used to be a place you could dive if you were non-military? Has it been open to the public for long or?
So that I don't know. I don't think so because it's been military for quite a long time. So if you get sponsorship there from military, you can go dive.
Right.
At the end of this, we did have a couple of people who got to go dive, because you could get like two people at a time over with sponsorship.
Okay.
And the diving, there's so much good diving there. Like before I worked for Backscatter, all I did was look for jobs on Kwajalein because there's the Prince Eugen. which we didn't get to dive this year, but we did in 2024. There's a massive amount of aircraft, and there's a bunch of Japanese ships as well. So there's a lot of good diving to be done there, but it is not a place that is frequently dove, except for the folks who are lucky enough to be stationed there.
And so, and in terms of Bikini Atoll, is that something anybody can do? Are
Yes.
there like charters there or?
Yes. Well, not any, I mean, you have to, it's very expensive, so it's cost prohibitive.
Okay.
But yes, anybody can go. So there are this particular year there were two boats, both by master liveaboards. Now the Indies trader is running trips again. It's all liveaboard based. There's no more land-based operation there. They stopped when the airline stopped supporting the island. Um, but you have to get you to travel through Kwajalein, you have to have like a piece of paper from the boat saying this is what I'm doing, this is why I'm here. And they very quickly usher you from the airport saying, don't take pictures of anything, don't take pictures of anything to the ferry terminal where they get you out. So it's definitely not a like a tourist spot by any means.
Okay.
Um, so yeah, so we got to Ebeye and we got on the Master liveaboard, the Pacific Master, commonly known as the Taka, and we began our 35-hour trip. And we did some of the best diving I've ever done in my life. There's I can't think of another place where you can dive two battleships and an aircraft carrier and multiple submarines and multiple destroyers. And it's all in a very calm lagoon. And the max depth for anything is about 180 feet. So it does definitely take some time in and some training to do that sort of diving. But the wonderful thing is that it's all doable on air. And so, me as an open circuit diver can still do, that because that is the maximum depth. And something like the Saratoga comes up much, much higher. So we had a lovely group of people and had some really lovely time diving. So a lot of penetration diving. So the Saratoga in particular. There's all these really, really cool things. Like again, they left everything on there. So there's, the old diving locker with the umbilical and the diving suits and the helmets and all these things from an era that's, you wouldn't find that on a ship that sunk now. But it was just fascinating to see. And then the day-to-day life stuff like the barber shop and the dentist office and the mess halls is just some of the most stunning stuff I've ever seen. This is the upper left is the bridge on the Saratoga. And then the bottom two are from the Nagato, which is I don't have time to get into that now, but give it a Google. It's one of the most historical ships that there is, a Japanese battleship. And the story behind it is fascinating, and it's very symbolic that we sunk it in Bikini, as the same with a lot of these wrecks. And then that shows you, that's my dad, my favorite dive buddy there, going through some little bits to get to new spots. And then another really cool part of Bikini, another thing, my second favorite thing to wreck diving is abandoned buildings. And there used to be a land-based operation on Bikini, and that's no more. So one day we went ashore, and it's all just there. And so you can go just check out this place that used to be. And some of the friends I was with had actually stayed there in the early 90s when it was still open. So it was really, really fascinating to see. It actually was open later. It was open to the mid to 2000s, or not mid 2000s, 20, mid two aughts, I guess. But really, really neat to be able to walk through and see this kind of history. And one cool thing that I didn't see until the following year was all of the testing stuff they had done, like growing things and trying things like that. Was really fascinating just to see the damage that we had done, and the cesium was the biggest problem. So just
How
some,
radioactive is it still?
um, so you can't eat anything that's grown there. You can spend time there, and that's fine. But yeah, you can't eat anything that's grown there. Still is chocked full of cesium. In the water, what they say the solution to pollution is dilution. So the water is a-okay. But they say it's no more radioactive than it's ever been. So I don't know if that's good or bad, but that's the EPA's that's their one group brought like a Geiger counter and it was nothing scary.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, but it's still uninhabitable. So we told these people years, and it's been decades and decades and decades, and those folks still cannot go back. So again, just more photos because this is a dive talk. Figured I'd show some underwater stuff.
Hey,
So
hey
lots of
Becca, if it
yes.
if it's still uninhabitable, how are they running a land-based operation?
So it's everything had to be brought in. So they're no longer running a land-based operation, but it's uninhabitable in the sense that it's not self-sufficient. Like you
Yeah,
cannot grow things there and have like a life there. Like everything they had to do was shipped in or
yeah,
flown in. Yeah, and it's not generations either. It's dive guides doing 4 or 5 years there and then leaving.
yeah, yeah. All right, thank you.
Of course. So more just beautiful, beautiful scenes, like big giant props on, every kind of ship that you can imagine, just stunning diving. And then my favorite are like the day-to-day things like the galleys and the hot water cisterns for the coffee and the things that, just people use. And these are both from the Saratoga, which is one of the most fascinating ships I've ever been on in my life because it's a city. I mean, it's a I think 660 foot long city. It's amazing. And just a bit from we did a lot of watching war movies and stuff at night and a lot of gear involved. It's definitely a gear heavy sport. And part of the lovely part of this is we had no connectivity. This was kind of just pre Starlink on all the boats. So we got back after our wonderful trip, and as we all started to get connectivity, we all realized we had no flight home. And this is where the actual story begins. Um, United had done us a solid and they'd all rebooked us on the next available flight, which was 10 days away. And at that point, we were all like, no, that's not possible. 10 days is not possible. Um, so what had happened was Typhoon Mawar, was Super Typhoon Mawar, which is I think the biggest typhoon to date in the Pacific, had absolutely hammered Guam. So that picture of the water running down the stairs and the escalator is the Guam airport. And if you've ever been through the Guam airport, you know it is not at a low point. So for that to happen is insane. And we were not traveling through Guam, but the route that you take to get to and from Kwajalein, it's the island hopper that goes through Guam. So because Guam was shut down, the entire island hopper was shut down. So we were kind of at the mercy of Guam opening back up. Um, and again, we could not stay on Kwajalein. So back to Ebeye we went. And we originally were going to be there for 2 days because of the ways that flights work. And then before we knew it, it was 10. And these are just a couple of things I pulled off the internet. Okay, like what do we do in Ebeye? And it's like there's nothing, there's very little to do. There's actually a lot of really kind of sad, terrible reviews of Ebeye on the internet. People do not give it the credit that it deserves. It's kind of a wonderful place. It doesn't have tourist infrastructure because that's not the kind of place that it is. Most of the folks who are employed, and employment is about 35%, unemployment is about 35%, and half of the 15,000 people that live there are under 18, so it's not even taking those people into account. So it's a very impoverished place. It's also the fifth least visited country in the world is all of the Marshall Islands, but of that, Ebi is one of the least visited out of those as well. And so we got to I'll just go back to this. So we get to the hotel with all of our stuff and we get in. And it immediately reminded me of a place that Hemingway would have gone on a bender. So I decided that my activity of choice was going to be to take notes of everything that happened every day. And though none of us penned a great novel, I did underline something every day that I wanted to stick. And that's kind of what this is. And you might think that before this I was socially inept, and that might be true. But these were my lessons that I came away with. And the first one from day one was wherever you are is someone's home. And this came with checking into the hotel. and I gave them all of our updated dates, and they just were like, why? Was the question from them is, why are you here for that long? And my answer at that point was, well, we're stuck here until flights resume. And later that day, back in our rooms and after a few beers, I realized what I had really said was, that we're only here because we have to be, and we have no intention of being here or finding out more about this place, and it's their home. And so, after that, we tried not to do that. When people would ask us why we were here, it was we're here for the week checking it out. We got a lot of really out of that. But from that point, I really tried to remember that it's someone's home, and I only took pictures of people who asked and or people who I asked. It was a back and forth, or of things that were beautiful. I didn't want to go show the squalor and the bad parts because it's someone's home. And another one for me is you can always be sweatier. And what I really mean by this, it's a sweaty place just to begin with, a very, very sweaty place. Um, but it can always be worse. So, we had Wi-Fi once in a while, and we had a place where we could go eat, and there was one hotel, and because nobody could fly in, we were able to stay there for the whole time. We had a big joke of ours is we had bathroom buckets, but they were for flushing, not for going in. So it could have always been worse. And when all of us talk about it now, and how then we were like, oh my gosh, this is insane. In retrospect, we had it really, really good. So you could always be sweatier. Um, Another big one for me, and this is kind of a couple at once, and this was afforded to us because we had no agenda and we had nothing but time, was but to meander and to stop and listen. And a big one as an American is to overpay, and say yes as much as possible. So when you get invited to things, and again, even it's like I go to a place like like Paris, and somebody's like, "Oh, would you like this?" And you're like, "No, no, 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 no," because they're gonna want money. And a place like this, I'm like, "Yes." And then I give them more than they asked for because in the scheme of going to a place like Bikini, giving somebody, $5, it kind of is like a month salary for them, but for you, in the scheme of things, isn't that much. And stopping and spending a couple hours with someone who lives there, someone whose family is from Bikini and they'll never get the chance to go there, or someone who owns a shop there, and just spending the time with people. I think that's one thing that was instilled in me so much from this time, is to just like say yes, like, oh, we're doing this, come with us and come to my house and do this. And most people are good, and it's gonna work out fine. So just say yes and enjoy people and their stories, and listen to people more than you talk to them. Everyone will ask you questions, and it's boring to talk about yourself when you're in a place like this. So listening to other people's fascinating stories is really something.
Are they predominantly Melanesian or Polynesian?
So it's Marshall Islanders, and I'm not sure historically where folks are from, but Ebeye actually was very sparsely inhabited originally. And we displaced the folks from Bikini there, who weren't that many. But obviously the population grew quite a lot. But we also displaced folks from, so we have more than just the military installation on Kwajalein. We have a lot of that atoll and a lot of Bikini Atoll and other atolls in the area where we did a lot of testing, continue to do not nuclear testing, but missile testing. So we've displaced people from all over to this island. And so it's sort of the fruits of that. But like originally speaking, it was very much uninhabited. Um, yeah, I don't know if that answers that. I don't know the historics of that. Apologize. But another thing too that was a big lesson for me, is I obviously did not pass as a local, obviously, but an effort was very much appreciated. And so I think it was day three that I went walking down the street, and I went from Howley to Mama, which was like maybe the proudest day of my life. And I attribute that to two things. One, as you can see from the photos, I had thankfully brought one skirt with me that I'd picked up in Chuk on a previous trip. And the women there, they don't wear pants, and they don't wear skirts or shorts like above the knee or anything like that. So I was like, okay, I guess I'm wearing this the rest of the time, and the one t-shirt that I have that's not a tank top. And just that alone, made people not stare you down. And then my other favorite thing, and as photographers, I think you'll appreciate this, is a Polaroid camera. I will never travel without one now. And this made such a difference because, again, this was such an impoverished place. This was not a place where people had pictures of themselves. And so we started going out. We actually met a man who worked for the hotel, and he would go on walks with us, and he would like call kids out from all these multi-generational homes, and we'd take family photos and photos of all the kids. And then he'd go like hunt down their moms and aunts and give them the photos. We didn't keep anything. We just gave them away. And it was kind of really the most, and even though I don't have them and I don't have access to them, I never will, they're the most meaningful captures I've ever made. Because just looking at, kids watch this appear in front of them was really something special. And it made us, much more accepted. And in that vein, we also learned that going out in small groups made a big difference, not going out with our whole group of, 12 people, but a few of us at a time, and really just stopping and talking with people. And none of it was unasked for. Like all these were all children and families who ran after us to get photos. And that made our entire time very, very different. We were not isolated after that. We were very much welcomed into the community. This was more for our folks, and when you find yourself in a situation like this, there are things that were tough. We had people who were in danger of losing their jobs, or people who were, missing important things back home, and people whose significant others didn't actually believe that we were stuck there and that we were just sort of extending our vacation. Um, and so we tried to make sure that we as a group did spend time together. So I would do like movie night in my room. We had a funny little text thing where we'd be like, how's everybody feeling today? What number are you at? And, we had my friend and we'd have a daily walk where we'd go do this or that, and some of the others would have a daily ice cream. And one of our friends made it over to Kwajalein, and may have smuggled back some rum, even though you're definitely not supposed to do that, which was something fun. And I don't, for those of you who have seen Captain Ron, this is where it comes from. About midway through the trip, I decided that I needed to wean everyone off the war movies because we were all getting a little antsy. So we're like, let's watch Captain Ron. Um, and that's where that quote comes from. But doing stuff together when you find yourself in a situation like this and checking in on each other, even though it, like, again, seems all trivial now. At the time, we didn't even know if we were going to get out in 10 days. So it was a little heavy on some people more than others. And so being there for one another was wildly important, and having little rituals even though we had nothing that we needed to do, where it's just like we all have something planned, made a big difference for all of us. And this one too, again, kind of goes with the other stuff I've said, but make new friends, with reckless abandon. Again, most people are good, consider them friends from the beginning, and appreciate old friends borderline aggressively. This is something that, I bond with people in every trip that I go on, but this was an entirely new level. And this too was, like, so these are our pictures, not only people that I came there with, but the crew was also stuck with us on the island. So we got a lot of time to hang out with the crew, and get to know them, which was lovely. They're still very dear friends of mine. And a lot of people that we were there with were friends of mine from the beginning. But then we made a lot of new friends who, it wasn't just like one night in the bar. We'd go back to these people over and over again, or the people who worked for the hotel. We went and took pictures of their family. We went and had kava with them. We went to a graduation. We did, all sorts of things that we wouldn't have had the chance to do if we didn't just, we're like, yes, we're we go way back. We're good friends now. Like this is I think it's so easy, especially when you're just passing through a place. We're in our little bubble with the people that we know, and we're mission oriented, especially with remote travel. Like, this is where we're going, and this is what we're doing. And we miss all of the peripheral of things, and the people that, you can meet along the way and experience is something amazing. And when I went back in 2024, I got to see many of these people again, and they remembered. They're like, "Oh, do you have your camera?" And like people remember that stuff. It goes a long way, and I don't. The same is not true for people who are just passing through. It's spending time with people and getting to know their families and their homes and things like that that makes such a big difference. And I can't also underemphasize the friends that you bring with you, and just like, we got there as like, yes, we're friends, and we left as like, I love you guys. We're brothers and sisters. Like this is a whole new level. Um, and don't spend too much time waiting for the rain to let up. And I mean this figuratively and literally. It rained a lot while we were there, which can get mildly depressing too. And so very quickly we decided that we would just go do what we were going to do regardless, because we were going to be quite moist just with the weather anyway. So we didn't wait for the rain to let up. And it was about at this time too that we stopped spending our mornings on the phone with United trying to find an earlier way out, and just came to terms with, okay, we're going to go with what's booked, or we're going to go whenever we can. And that was part of it too, is to just do what you're doing. And if you spend too much time worrying about things you can't control, again, you're gonna miss all of these beautiful experiences that you can have. Many of which included drinking flats of beer that we walked through the rain down the flooded road back to wherever we happened to be hanging out that day. Um, and this one is more for me than anyone, but a little meat juice won't kill you. So, being a vegetarian in a place where nothing grows is a fun experience. And so it's a bit of a joke, but I definitely consumed more, and a place where you don't want to eat anything that's not boiled or cooked or peeled. Definitely ate a lot more meat juice. But that's not going to kill you. But we are in a place where there were things that will. So I travel, I mean, I lead trips, so I tend to overpack. Any of you have maybe seen me get ready for a trip know this. Um, but I had about, 30 pounds of medical gear with me. And when we get on the boat, I'm like, oh, well, this was a little excessive because they have everything I have and more. But then this happened, right? And something like a cut in a place like this when you're in the tropics can very quickly get very infected to a point where I've seen like people come back with like a hand twice the size as it was when we left. And so having all of these things with you, and so lots of medicine. We had people half rationing medicine midway through the trip. And so that's something I can't emphasize enough to anybody who travels, and not even remotely, but bring whatever meds you have, not just for the amount of time you're going to be there, but if you have it, bring it. And then for a place like this, wound care is the biggest thing. So they did have a clinic and a hospital, which thankfully we didn't have to send anybody to. But we also took good care of each other and making sure that little cut, take care of immediately. And then the big thing that I like to leave people with this is don't bring it home with you. So all of the people that we met and spent time with, all of this got left with them because yes, they have a clinic, but they don't have access to the same things that we have access to. And so I always, always, always travel with several courses of antibiotics, and I always leave those behind along with every over-the-counter and every wound care piece of thing that I have. And yes, it's not inexpensive to replace 20 pounds of medical gear on every trip. But you could save somebody's life if, leaving something behind. So take it and leave it there. Um, There are some caveats to this, but I truly believe it is absolutely okay to enjoy things as they happen with no regard for how they will turn out. And this was our second to last day, and this day we find out that the flight is maybe or maybe not going, but it is most definitely overbooked. So we have no idea once again if we're getting out or not. Um, but we decided, let's not think about that. And we took a lot of, it's not a very big island, but there's some causeways that get kind of from one atoll to another. Um, and we found this beach right by the dump, and and it was like just one of the most beautiful days, that I've ever spent. We just swam and didn't really care about how it would work out or the fact that we were right next to a dump, which maybe wasn't the best plan, but it was one of the most lovely places. Obviously on the leeward side of the island and not the windward side of the island, which is about 7 feet away, which is really interesting to see. Um, but and then my last one that I truly believe has no caveats, is near delusional optimism can't hurt. And this is what one of my good friends who had a bit of a rough time while we were there called me near delusional in my optimism every day because I kind of loved every minute of this despite some challenges. And so this is a day when we found almost all of us were getting out. We left one person behind, but he was in the same camp as me where he was like, "This is great. We're good. We're having a good time." And I believe no matter what's going on, this is always true. And it worked out. And even if we hadn't left when we left, it would have worked out. But we did leave 10 days after we arrived, and it was out of all the places I've been in the world and all the things I've done, this was the most like life-defining 10 days of my life. Absolutely. And there was a place I could get cake, which is kind of magical in a place where you can't get very much. And I almost forgot to put bikini on it because it was like having two separate trips. It almost just said Team Ebeye because that overshadowed all of this amazing diving that we had done. But yes, there's me cutting cake. I wasn't about to murder anyone.
It's a little hard to tell from the picture.
But yeah, so that's my
So
kind of
one question I had was just a quick internet search while you were giving this shows that United has service 3 times a week to
yep.
Kwajalein. Why did you guys have to wait 10 days to catch a flight out?
Yeah, so because of the typhoon, because nothing was running, because Guam was still shut down for that entire time.
I see.
The flight that we got out on was the first flight that actually got out. So we had one person who was retired military who got out on a military flight
Yeah,
Ah,
direct to Honolulu.
I
Um,
see.
and then we had one person who got to Majuro on an Air Marshall Islands flight because they were still running. And then from there was able to get to Honolulu. But we
Hmm.
got out on the first United flight. So yes, they do run. They also get canceled quite a bit. But because Guam was not up and running for that entire time, we couldn't get out.
So did United know it would be shut for more than a week?
Yeah, they booked us. That was the first book flight that they booked us on, was the one that we actually got out on.
Hmm.
Um, there were earlier flights that they had scheduled. That was the first one with room. It just happened to be coincidental, I think,
I see.
that we actually got out on that flight, but they didn't know anything. And we thankfully had internet, but it was a slow process trying to get any information. And then you got there and they just didn't have it.
Yeah.
And then, any amount of news we got, on Guam, there were just giant lines of people out, like camped outside the airport. And, and it's interesting because, you knew going into this how privileged we are to be able to go to the middle of the world with all of our fancy toys to take pictures of, war trash. But then you get to a thing like this and you just are at the mercy of Mother Nature. And, the military is now coming to rescue 12 tourists off of an island. Like that just wasn't going to happen. So it really kind of puts that into perspective a little bit too.
So
What
the
about, you said this was some of the best diving you've done. Do you mean that in terms of like wreck diving? And
Yes.
if so, how does it compare to truck? And then in terms of like encrustation or underwater, seems like this is a little bit far to the east in the Coral Triangle to be as good as, other places further west. Can you comment on
Sure.
comparisons
Yeah,
to
no,
other
I'd love to.
diving?
So, I am a wreck diver through and through. So
Right.
I prefer wrecks that don't have stuff on them or a lot of things. So I like being inside of wrecks in particular. So that's one of the reasons, and just the history is the big part for me. And so to be able to, d dive a place where wars were started and ended, from these ships is kind of amazing. And so the historical significance for number one, and then some of the only places in the world where you can dive, an American and a Japanese. I mean, it is the only place where you can dive in an American and a Japanese battleship, and an aircraft carrier, is really really stunning. And just the the outsides are amazing, of the wrecks, the big props and the pagodas and the like, just all these amazing things. But the penetration dive, so where you can see, the galleys and the CIC, and just like where the day-to-day stuff happened is really something special. I've been to Truck many more times than I've been to Bikini. And I was going to say, if you were going to pick one to start with, I would hands down choose Chuk, because there's every kind of diving there. There's recreational diving, up to even deeper stuff than Bikini, certainly. And there's a lot more. We downed 75 ships there. So there's a lot to see there. And it's very, while yes, there's technical diving, it's very easy diving. Not to say that Bikini is hard diving, but it's definitely, you have to very much have honed your skills to dive in Bikini. The silt is very, very fine. It's, you have to have like full overhead experience to get the most out of that kind of diving. Whereas Chuk, I think I went there the first time as a junior open water diver. So there's a lot broader range of stuff there. And I mean, talk about horse historical significance also. Each one of those wrecks has its own pre-war history, and then everything that happened during the war, and the fact that that was an actual wartime battle is really stunning. But both are amazing diving. In terms of coral, um, have gone to Chuk with, and they went to Bikini, a group of coral biologists who work for Arizona State University. And for hard coral, they are the two most diverse places they've ever studied ever. And they're still trying to figure that out why. But they think it's the steel hulls, and because it started fresh, and so it's not one species that took over. It's a bunch in a small area. So per square meter, it's the most diverse hard coral you can see.
Okay, thank you.
That's interesting about the coral diversity.
Yeah, it's wildly interesting. And they started with bikini, so they were wondering if it had something to do with, the nuclear aspect. But then when they did Chuk and found the same exact thing, it's just like the warm water steel new. It's really fast. They have a paper out. So it's Asner Labs out of Arizona State University, who did that, and it's really fascinating.
Very cool.
I have a quick question. Is Bikini a technical dive site, or can open circuit divers still enjoy diving in Bikini?
Sure. So I did an open circuit, but it is technical. It's technical open circuit diving for sure. So I went with, on the first trip I went, we were about half open circuit, half rebreather. And on the last time I went, I was one of two open circuit people. I would, if you're on the fence or if you were thinking of going rebreather, I would wait until you're rebreather to go, simply because of the silt, and you have to get a shot before you breathe when you get into a place to get a good shot there. Um, it's hard with bubbles. It is very much technical diving, is that you're in for very long decompressions. And then, I mean, the other part of doing it open circuit, you can dive on air, certainly, but 180 feet on air is no joke, and you are in the middle of nowhere, where there's no help coming if anything goes wrong. So it is very much big boy diving, even though there's no currents or, anything crazy like that, and it's warm weather just by where you are, and the depth is, I'm around a bunch of people who do crazy, crazy deep diving, so I don't tend to consider that like wildly deep, but it is. I mean, that's deep diving.
So you were doing 180 feet on air,
Yeah.
and how much deco were you typically ending up with?
So I carry, so I do doubles air, and then I have a 80 of 50% and an 80 of O2, pretty much all the time. So, we would do, I mean, depending on the wreck, and we weren't always at 180 feet. That's like where the bottom of the
Yeah,
lagoon
yeah.
is. So, but we would regularly have 40, to an hour deco. So we were running 90 to 2 hour dives.
Yeah.
90 minutes to 2 hours. But it could, I mean, it's the water's warm and you've got like a nice line to hang. I mean, so it couldn't have been easier to do that kind of diving.
And you had your Kindle and your housing to read a book.
No, I love the nothing. So we had people who had like their like dive Volk housings, like watching movies and stuff. I don't even like to look at the people I'm hanging with. I like to just stare off into the blue. That's like one of my favorite things about technical diving, is the nothing part, where you just have to focus kind of on where you are and what you're doing and what you just saw and nothing. I love that part.
Nice.
That was such an awesome presentation.
Oh,
Just
thank you.
in general, just like reminders of things to think about when we're going to all these places and even how applicable things are for
Everywhere.
today.
Yeah, no, right. I know exactly.
I
Yes,
have
yeah,
a question for you.
yes.
Becca, would you consider becoming an anthropologist if you had to give up diving?
Would I consider becoming an anthropologist? That's funny. My mom has a degree in anthropology. That was like on the list when I was younger. Why do you ask that? That's such an interesting question.
Because everything that you did is what anthropologists normally
Oh,
do. I have
oh,
a degree in anthropology as well, and I was going, this is so typical of an
oh.
anthropologist.
Oh, neat. Okay. I love that. That's really cool. I would love to go. So like when I went back to Bikini this last year, I scheduled extra time in Ebeye to just go back and do this. And now every time I go to Chuk, I go about a week early, and I don't dive, and I just go be with people because it's such a different, like we lose so much when we just go somewhere and get in the water. And it's like we haven't even been to some of these places, that we go. So I'll add that one to the list, Helga. That's yeah, we'll see. I like that idea. I could do that. Any other questions from anybody? I know I went kind of long here. It's almost 8.
Uh,
Phenomenal.
Thank you very much for doing the presentation, particularly after just flying back from Singapore.
That was hours ago.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Many coffees ago. Yeah, yeah.
Well, thank you guys for having me. This one in particular, I really enjoy sharing with people because it's very special to me. So thank you.
It's really great. Thank you
Great.
very much.
Thank you, Becca.
Thank you guys. Good to see everyone.
Go get some sleep.